Hello, and welcome to part two of our belief system. If you have missed the first part, I would suggest that you can go to my YouTube website and you can re-pick that up, and I will be posting these on Facebook. But anyway, let's go back and look at what we have covered in part one. The first thing we decided was that beliefs are not facts. This is very important that we understand that what we have been taught and what we have caught and learned to believe are not facts. We looked at the relationship of language. We started by defining the word, and it seemed like a very obvious thing. But let's really look at how our belief systems are built. The building block of beliefs are words. And when we understand the definition of word, see, a word is a symbol. Understand that. It's not a thing, it's not a person, it's not a place, it's not an idea. It's a symbol, pretty much like a flag is a symbol of the nation. It's not the nation. See, so a word is a symbol that brings to mind. See, the word brings to mind a particular idea, thought, system, person, whatever. But the word is the primary building block, the symbolic building block. The secondary building block of our belief system is the mind. Because we use the word chair. There is no chair in our mind, but the image of a chair comes to our mind. Now, the image is not a real chair. So once again, then the image in our mind is symbolic of a real chair. So we have a primary and a secondary symbolic system. And this primary secondary symbolic system is what relates us as human beings to what is going on around us. Now, the problem is that what's going on around us is often corrupt, etc. But we'll get into that later. What we do realize is that as a baby, we begin to learn words because we learn that words get us rewards. I mean, when we say the word mama, in the beginning, everybody's so excited, and they, look, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? She said mama. She said mama. Or dad, did she say dad? And we learn very quickly as babies to get that attention. We can use certain words. And we learn quickly that everybody around us are using these things called words. So it sets up in us a desire to learn these words. Now, let's go back and look at something. Before we learned the words, we had a system of communicating. We were born with it. We were born sucking, so that we could get the nutrients that we needed to survive. So survival became a part of what we learned to do from the time that we were born. We also learned a system of communication before we were born. We were in the mother's womb for 9 months, and we were using the same nutrients, hearing the same conversations, and building up the same hormones, and having that experience, and letting the mother know what our needs were. So when we were born, we use a system of crying to communicate to those around us what our needs are. After a very short time, we're able to say, oh, she's crying for milk now. Oh no, she's crying because she want to be held now. She's crying because she need a diaper change. So we're able to communicate particular needs to our environment. But watch this. As we communicate our particular needs to our environment is receptive of these needs. So we're teaching them what we need as we're learning how to get what we need. See, so teaching and learning always go together. This is why people in 12-step rules will say you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. Because teaching reinforces the learning and vice versa. Learning reinforces teaching. So as we learn how to get what we need, we're also teaching others. We're teaching others how to give us what we need. So that goes on until after a while we begin to use words and we can communicate at a different level. But that instinctive knowledge and ability to communicate, we lose it as we learn more and more words. And we pick up what is known now as our belief system. So how does this belief system develop? Well, the belief system develops as we encounter our environment in search of our needs and our wants. The things that we need for survival and the things that we want for comfort. So our need for comfort and survival motivates us. But what we will learn later on, I'll just mention it now, there are two main motivating forces in the universe. One is love, the other is fear. We'll talk about love after when we get into the spiritual concepts later on. But right now I want us to understand how this belief system controls everything about us. It controls what we think that we're independently thinking. It controls our behavior. It controls our values. It controls our morals. It controls everything about us. And even when we are saying, well, that's my opinion. I got this opinion. That's your opinion. What you're saying is that I believe this part of the belief system, and you believe that part of the belief system. You see, because the belief system is not a static thing, it's dynamic, and it grows and it adapts, but it has some underlying principles, just as spiritual growth has some underlying principles that don't go away. For an example, when I've seen women in a group playing games, playing cards, and their babies in the other room. And one of the babies began to cry. And the mother always knows whose baby it is. Oh, that's mine there, let me go. And they're always correct in this. And I didn't quite understand how. It's because they have learned that communication system. And that communication system is what is needed by both for the survival of that child. Well, it's the same way as we begin to learn words. The words that we learn and the values that we learn, is what we need in order to survive and in order to get comfort in the world. We use the things that's used to teach and to learn our belief system. It's reward and punishments. Just as we reward the baby when it cries for milk. Well, when it does well in school or something, we reward them. When it does say good things or bad things, we either reward or we punish. Now, we'll talk about punishment later. But anyway, the seeking for our survival, and our comfort. It's how we begin to interact with the world, and how the world interact with us is through reward and punishment. See, from the time we realize that we can manipulate our surroundings, which is a very young thing, we will begin to manipulate it to get our desires and our needs. A good example, I can remember when my youngest son, mother was going shopping, and I was studying. I was in school. I was studying, and she wanted to leave him home. I said, "No, I'll take him with you because I need to study." And he said, "No, because he just been at the store falling out." And I said, "No." I said, "No, he don't do that." And she said, "Yes, he does." And I said, "Well, take him anyway." And she took him. And after they were at the store, I got up and I went behind them because I wanted to see this. And sure enough, when I got to the store, he was all on the floor just having a tantrum, just kicking because he wanted something. He wanted what he wanted. He wanted it right then. And his way of getting it was reverted back to his baby behavior, of crying and kicking. Since the words, "I want this," did not work, then the behavior reverted back, and she would give him what he wanted just to get him up off the floor. When I walked in and I saw what was going on, and I said, "Boy, if you don't get up from there, I bet you I'll beat you all the way to," which I wasn't going to beat him because I don't believe in it. But he just stayed there, and so I just grabbed the bucket and we went on shopping. I ignored him, because punishment don't work. Punishment only works to change the behavior right there in front of you. But if you ignore the behavior, it would eventually begin to end because there's no reward in that. So even punishment can be a reward for some people at times. So punishment does not work. So I learned then that he has learned to manipulate his environment, and he has learned to do it in particular situations one way, and another situation another way. See, so our belief system then reinforces certain behaviors that we find that's a payoff for us. Anything that we do, and we do it repeatedly, there's a payoff until there's no longer a payoff. So we're always teaching and learning because as he reverts back to his old behavior, he's teaching that you're going to give me what I want. And she's learning, well, I'm going to give it to him, just to keep him quiet. See, as we learn words and synthesis and we begin to put together language, that's what the belief system is. Belief system is a system of language. But it also teaches us values. You see the belief system, it's a dualistic system. It has an up and a down, an in and an out, good and a bad, heaven and hell, and all these value words also come into the belief system to teach us. The value words become then our reward and punishment. Oh, you did so good. That's good. And that makes the person feel good because they think they are doing something right, whatever that is. But it's a reward. We train animals the same way. It's a reward. All rewards don't have to be something physical. Just the verbal, once you learn the values of good and bad, right and wrong, then these value words become then words that can actually control your behavior. It doesn't control your mind, but it will control your behavior. It will control what you believe. Like we grow up believing that certain things are right, and if everybody is doing it, not doing it, then something is wrong. What we have learned through our language is how to judge. We become judgmental using language. But all of this is another form of fear. See, I fear that if I'm right and you're doing something the opposite of what I'm doing, then either I have learned the wrong thing or you're teaching me the wrong thing. But it's fear. I fear that I may not get the reward that I'm seeking if I look at it your way, if I don't do it the way I've been taught. Now, the complication with this belief system and why we have to be careful, is that we begin to learn a belief system with our family, and then by the time we, reach 5 or 6 years old, we're not just with our family, we're off to school. Now we're interacting with people who also have belief systems that have been formed by their families. And they may not be the same. So we now begin to seek rewards from our peers. We got some our peers who may be bullies, and we seek to avoid them. We don't seek punishment from them. But then we have some peers who think like us, are very similar to us, and it's like a reward to be with them, and we feel comfortable around them. So seeking comfort, and survival, even when we're around our peers, it begins with what was happening with the family, So as we progress through the environment, we learn that what we have been taught and what we have caught is what we must believe in order to succeed in our environment. Now, in some environments, what has been taught that is good, maybe against the law, maybe maybe unspiritual, I say it that way, because I don't want to judge anybody's behavior. But anyway, like all the things that we believe and things that we have done, that we do, as we look at it as part of a belief system that has taught us and caught us, and we have caught in this system things that is now guiding us, then we begin to see that much of what we do is not based on an independent or creative thought of our own, but it's based on what we have been taught and what we call our belief system. At some point, we need to sit down and look and say, now, what is really true? How do I take control of my lives? For me, this happened when I went into recovery. I had been taught certain things at home, taught certain things in the street. I was taught certain things in school. All of this was conflicting, and none of it made sense, but all of it worked to get me to the point where I needed help, because my belief system had turned against me. And that's what happens with belief systems. They will control us and they will take hold of us, you know, and they won't let us go until we begin to look for alternatives. So the question is how did these belief systems originate? What caused them? And what is it in our culture that holds them? Well, there's several things, and we'll talk about these things next. First, our political system. Next, our economic system. And then our religion. The things that create the biggest problems in our belief system are capitalism, economics, poverty, and richness, and religion. You know, the belief that we're going to die and go to hell. You know, if we don't do what our belief systems say we should do. Well, my question, and the question that I'd like to examine next, is who benefits from me believing what I've been taught and what I've caught? Who actually want me to have this belief? And we'll talk about that next time because that is very important. Once we understand who benefits from this and why it's important that they keep us believing what we've been taught, then we may begin to want to seek change. Thank you, and you have a great and God-loving day. My remote